1 year later, the company had become unrecognizable in the best possible way. The once rigid corporate environment now buzzed with energy as children's artwork decorated the walls of the family workspace and employees moved freely between traditional offices and collaborative areas. Olivia stood in front of a crowd of business journalists, explaining how the company's revolutionary workplace policies had not only improved productivity but had been adopted by corporations worldwide. Her voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who had fought for change and won. "The future of work isn't about choosing between family and career," she explained as cameras flashed. "It's about creating environments where both can thrive." In his office, Alexander watched the press conference on the monitor, pride evident in his smile. The board members seated around him nodded approvingly at the latest figures. Profits had doubled since implementing Olivia's changes. Luna, now 10, sat in the front row of the press conference, beaming at her mother. Her asthma attacks had become rare, thanks to less stress and better medical support through the company's new healthcare program. After the press conference, Olivia found a handwritten note on her desk. "Dinner tonight? To celebrate our success, bring Luna. A." The restaurant was quiet, tucked away from the busy city streets. Luna excitedly told them about her science project. She was developing an app to help kids with asthma track their symptoms. "Like mother, like daughter," Alexander said, watching Luna sketch her ideas on a napkin, always finding ways to help others. As they shared dessert, Olivia realized how naturally they had fallen into this rhythm, professional partners who had found a way to nurture their personal connection without compromising their principles or the company's success. "Remember when everyone thought we were having some scandalous affair?" Olivia laughed, cutting her chocolate cake. Alexander smiled. "Instead, we created something far more revolutionary, a workplace where people don't have to choose between personal happiness and professional success." Luna looked up from her drawing. "Mom, can we show Alexander my science fair project tomorrow? He gives really good feedback." The simple request highlighted how far they'd come. What had started as a CEO hiring a single mom had evolved into something deeper, a partnership that transformed not just a company, but countless lives. Back at the office the next day, Olivia overheard new employees giving their families tours of the workspace. "This is where we have our team meetings," one explained, "and that's the family area where kids can do homework after school." The pride in their voices echoed her own feelings. This wasn't just an office anymore, it was a community. Alexander joined her by the window, maintaining a professional distance but with warmth in his voice. "We've changed more than just this company, you know. Other CEOs call me weekly, asking how we did it." "We did it by being brave enough to challenge the old ways," Olivia replied. "By proving that success doesn't require sacrifice." As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow through the windows, they stood together, watching their vision unfold. Children's laughter drifted from the family space, mixing with the sound of productive work and genuine collaboration. Luna appeared with her science project, eyes bright with excitement. "Can I practice my presentation for both of you?" They gathered in the conference room, now softened with comfortable furniture and plants, listening as Luna explained her app. Other employees stopped by, adding suggestions and encouragement. This was the future they had built, where work and life didn't compete but complemented each other. Where a CEO and a single mom could create something larger than themselves, something that would impact generations to come. As they walked to their cars that evening, Luna chattering about her presentation, Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look of understanding. Their story wasn't a typical romance, it was something rarer and more valuable. A partnership that had changed not just their lives, but the very nature of how people worked and lived. "Same time tomorrow?" Alexander asked, his voice carrying the weight of everything unspoken between them. "Same time tomorrow," Olivia confirmed, knowing that whatever the future held, they had already created something extraordinary. A legacy of change that would continue long after their story became just another chapter in the company's history. And as they drove away in separate directions, the city lights twinkling around them, both knew that some connections transcend traditional boundaries, creating ripples of change that transform not just two lives, but countless others in their wake. And sometimes the most important relationships were the ones that transformed not just two people, but entire communities. This was one of those times. The morning sun filtered through the office windows as Olivia reviewed the latest company-wide changes. Her new flexible working policies had transformed the workplace. Parents could attend school events, caregivers could make medical appointments, and productivity had actually increased. But success brought its own challenges. The whispers had grown louder, spreading through office corridors like wildfire. "She's got the CEO wrapped around her finger," she overheard one morning. "Wonder what kind of overtime they're really working." Alexander wasn't immune to the gossip either. In a meeting with regional directors, one boldly asked, "Are these changes really about efficiency or about accommodating certain personal interests?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Alexander maintained his composure, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. "I suggest you focus on the 30% increase in productivity since implementing these policies." Later that afternoon, Olivia sat in her office, staring at an email from a competing firm. They'd heard about her innovations and were offering her a position, one that would come with fewer complications and higher pay. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Luna's teacher stood in the doorway, dropping off homework from her recent absence. "Luna's quite proud of her mom's work here," the teacher mentioned. "She tells everyone how you're helping other parents spend more time with their kids." The simple comment brought tears to Olivia's eyes. This was more than just a job now, it was becoming a movement, changing lives beyond just her own. As evening approached, Alexander found himself walking past her office. Through the glass, he saw her deep in thought, that familiar crease between her eyebrows that appeared when she was wrestling with a problem. "Everything okay?" he asked, pausing at her door. Olivia looked up, conscious of the curious glances from passing employees. "Can we talk? Somewhere private." They ended up in the empty conference room, the city lights twinkling below them. Olivia placed the competing offer on the table. "I need to know if what we're building here is worth fighting for." Alexander read the offer slowly, his expression unreadable. "These numbers are impressive." "It's not about the money," Olivia said quietly. "But the rumors, the constant scrutiny, it's affecting the work." "Affecting Luna." Alexander moved to the window, his reflection overlapping with the city lights. "When you first came here, I thought you'd just help fix our systems. Instead, you've shown us a whole new way of working, of leading." He turned to face her. "But you're right, the personal cost is high. For both of us." The unspoken feelings between them filled the room. They'd been dancing around this for months, maintaining professional distance while growing increasingly aware of their connection. "I could step back," Alexander offered. "Let other executives oversee your department." "That would only fuel more speculation," Olivia replied. "And honestly," she hesitated, "I trust your vision for these changes. Not many CEOs would have supported such radical transformations." Just then, Luna appeared at the door with the security guard who'd been watching her. "Mom, I finished my homework. Can we go home?" The moment broken, they stepped apart. But something had shifted, a decision made in the silence. The next morning, Olivia called a department meeting. With Alexander present, she addressed the rumors head-on. "Yes, the CEO supports these changes. Yes, we work closely together. But what we're building here is bigger than any two people. It's about creating a workplace where success doesn't come at the cost of humanity." Over the next few weeks, they established clear professional boundaries. Their interactions became more structured, always in open spaces or with others present, but their shared vision only grew stronger. One evening, as Olivia was leaving, she found a note on her desk. In Alexander's handwriting, "Some things are worth the fight, and some changes need champions willing to face the whispers to create something real." She smiled, tucking the note away. Looking around the office, she saw parents gathering their children from the new after-school workspace, team members collaborating across time zones thanks to flexible hours, and a culture slowly but surely transforming. This was their legacy, not a romance novel cliché, but something more meaningful, proof that compassionate leadership and business success could coexist. That sometimes the most powerful connections aren't about romance at all, but about sharing a vision of what work and life could be. As she walked to her car, Luna chattering beside her about her day in the office workspace, Olivia felt at peace with her decision to stay. Some battles were worth fighting, some changes worth protecting, even if they came with whispers and raised eyebrows. The boardroom buzzed with tension as Alexander prepared to present the quarterly results. The board members shuffled their papers, their expressions guarded. Just as he was about to begin, his phone vibrated. A text from Olivia. Emergency. Luna to hospital. Can't present data. His heart dropped. The presentation they'd spent weeks preparing hinged on Olivia's detailed analysis. But the fear in her hastily typed message told him this was serious. Through the glass walls, he saw her rushing toward the elevator, her face pale with worry. Without hesitation, he stood up. "Excuse me, gentlemen, we need to reschedule." The board chairman's face reddened. "This meeting has been planned for months. The investors are waiting for these numbers." Alexander was already heading for the door. "Then they'll wait a little longer." He caught up with Olivia at the parking garage. She was fumbling with her keys, hands shaking. Luna's school called. Her breathing. "I can't get her usual doctor on the phone." "I'm driving," he said firmly, taking her keys. The look of relief on her face confirmed he made the right choice. During the tense drive to the school, Olivia explained between phone calls that Luna had suffered a severe asthma attack during PE class. Her regular medication wasn't helping. They found Luna in the nurse's office, her breathing labored, lips slightly blue. The sight stopped Alexander in his tracks. He'd seen this bright, curious child so full of life just days ago, showing him her science project. Olivia swept in with the calm efficiency she brought to everything, but Alexander caught the tremor in her voice as she spoke to her daughter. "It's okay, sweetie. We're going to get you help." The hospital emergency room was crowded, but Luna's condition got them immediate attention. As doctors whisked her away for treatment, Olivia stood frozen, looking lost for the first time since Alexander had known her. Without thinking, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "She's going to be fine. She's as strong as her mother." The hours crawled by. Alexander fielded angry calls from the board, while Olivia paced the waiting room, alternating between talking to doctors and trying to reach Luna's specialist. Finally, around midnight, Luna's breathing stabilized. As she slept peacefully in the hospital bed, Olivia slumped in a nearby chair, exhaustion etched on her face. "The board meeting," she said suddenly. "The presentation, I'm so sorry." Alexander shook his head. "Some things are more important than quarterly reports." Looking at Luna's small form in the hospital bed, he realized how many times Olivia must have faced situations like this alone. How many times had she had to choose between her daughter's health and professional obligations? The next morning, he walked into the rescheduled board meeting with a new perspective and a radical proposal. "Before we discuss numbers," he began, "I want to talk about our company's core values. Yesterday taught me something important about priorities and human capital." He outlined a comprehensive healthcare initiative, including on-site medical support and emergency family leave policies. Some board members frowned, but others nodded thoughtfully. "The employee isn't just a worker," he continued. "They're often someone's parent, someone's caregiver. When we support that whole person, we get more than productivity. We get loyalty, innovation, and dedication." He shared how Olivia's department had the highest productivity despite her flexible schedule, how her team showed more initiative and creative problem-solving than any other division. "Yesterday, I saw firsthand what our employees with family responsibilities navigate. We can either add to their burden, or we can become a company that truly supports its people." Back in the hospital, Olivia was preparing to take Luna home when a message from Alexander arrived. A photo of the board's signed approval for the new healthcare initiative with a simple note, "Some changes start with one person showing us a better way." Luna looked up from her book. "Is that from your boss? He was nice yesterday. He didn't leave until he knew I was okay." Olivia smiled, remembering how he'd quietly handled hospital paperwork, brought them food, and kept the board at bay. Yes, he's different from most bosses. That evening, as she finally returned to her desk to catch up on work, she found a small care package, Luna's favorite books, a new inhaler spacer, and a note, "Take all the time you need." Some things can't be measured in quarterly reports. Standing in her office doorway, Olivia realized that something fundamental has shifted. In the midst of crisis, professional boundaries had blurred into something more human, more real. The question was, Where did they go from here? As Olivia gathered her things to leave, Alexander watched her go, realizing that protecting her position meant keeping his own feelings firmly in check. But as he turned back to his desk, he couldn't help but wonder, at what cost? The tension in the executive boardroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Robert Chen, the vice president of operations, stood at the front of the room, his laser pointer circling aggressively over Olivia's latest efficiency report. "These numbers can't be reliable," he declared, his voice dripping with skepticism. "No system overhaul could possibly generate these kinds of savings. She must be manipulating the data." Alexander sat quietly at the head of the table, watching as several other executives nodded in agreement with Robert. He'd been expecting this pushback. Olivia's success was threatening the old guard's way of doing things. "And let's talk about her special treatment," Patricia from HR chimed in. "The flexible hours, the child in the office after school, it's causing resentment among other employees." Alexander leaned forward. "The same employees who are now getting their projects done on time because of her improved systems." Meanwhile, Olivia was in her office, unaware of the storm brewing upstairs. She was reviewing employee feedback on her latest implementation when she noticed several emails had been deliberately excluded from her access. Attempts to open certain project files were met with access denied messages. A knock on her door made her look up. Anna, a junior analyst, stood there nervously. "I thought you should know," she whispered. "They're trying to discredit your work. They've been asking us to report any mistakes you make any time you leave early." Olivia's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you for telling me," she said calmly, though her hands trembled slightly as she closed her laptop. Back in the boardroom, the discussion had turned heated. "We need to conduct a full audit of her department," Robert insisted, "and restrict her system access until it's complete." Alexander felt his patience wearing thin. "The same systems that just saved us $3 million in the last quarter." "About those savings," Patricia interjected, "there are rumors about your personal interest in protecting Ms. Martinez's position." The room fell silent. Alexander stood slowly, his voice deadly quiet. "Are you suggesting I would compromise this company's interests for personal reasons?" Before anyone could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. The company's biggest client was threatening to pull their contract due to issues with the old system, the very one Olivia had been blocked from updating. "Before we continue this witch hunt," Alexander said, "you might want to know that we're about to lose Jackson Industries because you prevented Olivia from implementing her updates to their platform." The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jackson Industries represented 20% of their annual revenue. Downstairs, Olivia was facing her own crisis. Luna's school had called. Her daughter's asthma was acting up again. But with this mounting pressure at work, could she risk leaving early? As she wrestled with this decision, Alexander appeared at her door. "Go," he said simply, having read the worry on her face. "I'll handle things here." Their eyes met briefly, both aware of the undercurrent of something more than professional concern, but neither willing to acknowledge it. The company gossip was already making things difficult enough. Later that evening, after ensuring Luna was stable and resting, Olivia returned to the office. To her surprise, she found Alexander had called an emergency meeting with the technical team, who were struggling without access to her systems. "Show them," he said when she walked in. "Show them exactly what happens when we ignore progress in favor of protecting old ways of thinking." For the next hour, Olivia demonstrated how her innovations had not only improved efficiency, but had built-in safeguards that would have prevented the current crisis if she'd been allowed to implement them fully. By midnight, the crisis was resolved, Jackson Industries was satisfied, and the technical team had a new appreciation for Olivia's work. But the victory felt bittersweet. "They'll keep coming after me," she said quietly as she and Alexander stood in his office afterward. "Maybe it would be better if I—" "Don't," he cut her off. "Don't let them win. What you've built here matters. The changes you're making matter." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But you need to know, there are rumors about us. About why I support your initiatives." Olivia felt her chest tighten. "I know," she replied, "and I'd never want to compromise your position or the company's stability." They stood in silence, both acutely aware of the growing feelings neither could afford to acknowledge, both knowing that the success of their professional relationship and the company's future depended on maintaining careful boundaries. As the rain finally let up and Olivia gently woke Luna to head home, Alexander watched them go, realizing that his company wasn't the only thing being transformed. His own perspectives on leadership, success, and what really mattered were shifting, all because of this unexpected force of nature who'd walked into his office looking for a job and ended up changing everything. He sat at his desk long after they'd left, looking at a proposal for company-wide flexible working hours that he'd been hesitant to implement. Thinking of Olivia and Luna, he picked up his pen and signed it. Sometimes, he was learning, the best business decisions came from the heart. The office had grown quiet as evening settled in. Most employees had left hours ago, but a soft glow still spilled from Olivia's workspace. She was deep in concentration, running final checks on a new efficiency protocol she developed when footsteps made her look up. Alexander stood there, his suit jacket draped over one arm. "You're here late," he said, then noticed Luna sitting quietly in the break room across the hall, working on what appeared to be a science project. "Just finishing up this new system," Olivia explained, rubbing her tired eyes. "Luna's babysitter had an emergency, but this couldn't wait. The morning team needs it ready to go." Instead of the disapproval she half expected, Alexander pulled up a chair. "Talk me through it," he said, genuinely interested. As Olivia explained her innovative approach, his eyes widened with understanding. "This could save us millions in operating costs," he realized aloud. "How did you come up with this?" Olivia glanced at Luna, who was now carefully gluing something to her poster board. "Being a single mom teaches you to find creative solutions. You learn to see problems differently when you're constantly juggling responsibilities." Alexander followed her gaze. "Must be challenging," he said softly, thinking of his own privileged upbringing. "It is," Olivia admitted, "but it's also made me better at everything I do. When you have limited time, you learn to make every minute count." Just then, Luna wandered in, holding her project. "Mom, can you check if this looks right?" Alexander found himself drawn into their conversation as Luna excitedly explained her project about renewable energy. Her eyes lit up the same way Olivia's did when discussing system improvements. "You know," he said, "we have some solar panels on the roof. Would you like to see them?" Luna's face brightened, looking to her mother for permission. Olivia nodded, and soon they were all heading up to the roof. As Alexander explained the building's energy system in terms Luna could understand, Olivia watched their interaction with surprise. The city lights sparkled around them as Luna asked question after question, her natural curiosity matching Alexander's unexpected patience in answering each one. This was a side of him the office never saw, relaxed, genuine, engaging. Later that night, after they'd left, Alexander stood in his office, thinking about their conversation. He'd learned more about Olivia in those casual moments than in all their previous professional interactions. The next few weeks brought subtle changes. Alexander found reasons to stop by Olivia's desk, discussing work but lingering for those moments when the conversation drifted to other topics. He noticed how she always kept a small photo of Luna next to her computer, how she seemed to light up when talking about her daughter's achievements. One morning, he overheard Olivia on the phone, dealing calmly with Luna's school about an asthma incident. The way she handled the crisis while simultaneously directing her team through a system upgrade impressed him deeply. During a particularly stressful board meeting, Alexander found himself using one of Olivia's problem-solving approaches. "Look at the issue from a different angle," she always said. It worked, leading to a breakthrough in a months-long deadlock. He began to notice small details, how she always had an extra inhaler in her desk drawer for Luna, how she'd arranged her workspace for maximum efficiency, how she could switch from complex technical discussions to helping the cleaning staff with their scheduling problems without missing a beat. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Alexander was surprised to find Olivia still at her desk. Luna was asleep on the break room couch, her science textbook open beside her. "The roads are flooded near our apartment," Olivia explained quietly. "Thought it safer to wait it out here." Without thinking, Alexander ordered dinner for all of them. That ended up sitting in his office, sharing Chinese takeout while discussing everything from company politics to Luna's latest science fair victory. "You've changed things around here," Alexander said suddenly. "Not just the systems, The whole atmosphere is different. Olivia looked surprised. I just try to solve problems as I see them. That's exactly it, he replied. You see things differently. You see possibilities where others see obstacles. Their eyes met for a moment too long, and both quickly looked away. There was an undercurrent here, something neither was ready to acknowledge. What no one could have predicted was how this unconventional hire would spark a chain of changes that would revolutionize not just the company's systems, but its entire culture. And for Olivia and Alexander, this was just the beginning of a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about success, leadership, and connection. The morning sun streamed through the conference room windows as Olivia sat across from the HR director, whose frown deepened with each passing minute. Your qualifications are impressive, Ms. Martinez, but your requested schedule is unusual. I understand my hours might seem unconventional, Olivia replied, maintaining her composure despite her racing heart. But I can guarantee my productivity won't suffer. I've developed a system that actually increases efficiency during my working hours. The HR director exchanged skeptical glances with her team. Just then, Alexander walked in, still energized by how Olivia had handled the server crisis earlier. I'd like to hear more about this system, he said, pulling up a chair. For the next 15 minutes, Olivia outlined her approach, explaining how she'd maximize her output at previous jobs while managing her daughter's needs. She pulled up a detailed workflow chart on her tablet, showing how she could accomplish in 6 focused hours what most people did in 8 or 9 scattered ones. The real waste in most offices, she explained, her eyes lighting up with passion, isn't from people working fewer hours, it's from inefficient processes that nobody questions because that's how it's always been done. Alexander leaned forward, intrigued. The board had been pushing for traditional cost-cutting measures like layoffs, but what if there was another way? What if the solution wasn't fewer people but smarter systems? There's just one concern, the HR director interjected. Your daughter's health issues, the insurance costs alone, would be offset by the savings my systems could generate, Olivia finished firmly. I can prove it in 3 months. Alexander stood up, his decision made. Ms. Martinez starts Monday. The HR team looked stunned, but he wasn't finished. And I want her to audit all our major systems. Fresh eyes might be exactly what we need. Later that afternoon, Olivia sat in her small apartment, staring at the offer letter on her laptop screen. Luna was doing homework at the kitchen table, her dark curls falling over her face as she concentrated on her math problems. Mommy, did you get the job? Luna asked, looking up from her work. Olivia smiled, remembering how Alexander had defended her hiring against the HR team's objections. Yes, sweetie, I did. The next Monday morning came with its own challenges. Olivia arrived early, determined to prove herself. She'd barely settled into her new desk when she overheard whispers from nearby cubicles. Must be nice to come and go as you please. Wondered who she knows to get such a sweet deal. Olivia took a deep breath and focused on her screen. She'd faced worse than office gossip. Opening her laptop, she dove into the company's systems, already spotting inefficiencies she could fix. By her 3rd day, she'd identified several major issues that were costing the company millions. She compiled her findings into a clear, concise report and sent it to Alexander. He was in a tense board meeting when her email arrived. As he scrolled through her analysis, his expression shifted from stressed to hopeful. Before we discuss layoffs, he announced to the irritated board members, I'd like to show you something. Using Olivia's report, he outlined a different approach to cutting costs. The board members' skepticism gradually turned to interest as they saw the potential savings. Meanwhile, Olivia was proving her worth in unexpected ways. When the marketing team's presentation crashed minutes before a client meeting, she not only recovered the files but improved the entire filing system to prevent future crashes. Alexander found himself repeatedly impressed by her practical solutions to problems others hadn't even noticed. He observed how she stayed focused during her shorter workday, never wasting a minute, yet always having time to help colleagues who asked for it. One evening, as he walked past her desk, he noticed she'd already left for the day. But on her whiteboard was a detailed diagram showing how to streamline the company's most problematic department. Even when she wasn't there, her impact on the company continued. By the end of her first month, the atmosphere in the office had shifted. Those who had initially doubted her were now seeking her advice. She'd created a more efficient workflow that allowed several departments to reduce overtime while increasing productivity. Alexander realized he hired not just a systems analyst, but someone who could help transform the entire company. As he watched her explain a new process to the IT team, her confidence and expertise obvious to everyone, he felt a mixture of professional admiration and something else he wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. The glass walls of Alexander's corner office offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but he barely noticed it anymore. His eyes were fixed on the quarterly reports spread across his desk, each page telling the same story: the company was in trouble. Running his fingers through his dark hair, he loosened his tie and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from the board chairman. At 35, Alexander had become the youngest CEO in the company's history, but right now that achievement felt more like a burden than an honor. The tech company he'd helped build was losing ground to competitors, and the board was breathing down his neck for immediate results. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant poked her head in. "Sir, HR sent up the resumes for the systems analyst position. They've scheduled interviews for today." Alexander waved her in, grateful for any distraction from the financial reports. As he flipped through the stack of resumes, one caught his attention. Olivia Martinez, a systems engineer with an impressive track record at smaller firms. Her cover letter mentioned being a single parent, which explained the 5-year gap in her employment history. Meanwhile, across town, Olivia was having a morning she'd rather forget. Her daughter Luna's asthma had flared up, causing them to run late for school. Now she sat in traffic, her navy blue interview suit already showing wrinkles, mentally rehearsing her answers while trying to push away thoughts of Luna's wheezing. "Mommy, I forgot my science project." Luna's voice came from the backseat, making Olivia's heart sink. The project was sitting on their kitchen counter. She'd seen it there this morning, but had been too focused on finding Luna's inhaler to remember it. Olivia checked the time. If she turned around now, she'd be late for the interview. If she didn't, Luna would get a 0 on her project. These were the impossible choices she faced every day as a single mother. Taking a deep breath, she made a U-turn. "It's okay, sweetie. We'll get it." She'd rather be a few minutes late to the interview than let her daughter down. Back at the office, Alexander was dealing with another crisis. Their main server had crashed, taking down half the company's operations with it. The IT team was scrambling, but nobody seemed to have answers. The board chairman had finally caught up with him, his voice sharp with frustration over the speakerphone. Just then, Olivia hurried into the lobby, slightly out of breath, her dark hair escaping from its neat bun. The receptionist gave her an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, but with the system crash, we're having to reschedule all appointments." Olivia overheard the technical terms being thrown around by passing its staff. She recognized the problem. She'd solved a similar issue at her previous company. Before she could stop herself, she spoke up. "Excuse me, but have you checked the backup synchronization protocols?" Her question caught the attention of a harried-looking IT manager who paused mid-stride. As Olivia explained her solution, neither she nor Alexander, who had emerged from his office to check on the chaos, realized that this moment would change both their lives. Alexander watched as this unexpected job candidate calmly walked the IT team through a solution nobody else had considered. Within 20 minutes, the servers were back online. He observed how she handled the situation with quiet confidence, never once mentioning that she was actually there for an interview. As systems came back online and the crisis subsided, Alexander made his way through the relieved employees to where Olivia stood, already gathering her belongings to leave, assuming her interview would be rescheduled. "Ms. Martinez," he said, extending his hand, "I believe we have an interview scheduled. Though I must say, you've already given quite an impressive demonstration of your skills." Olivia smiled, tucking her phone away. She'd been texting Luna's teacher about the delivered science project. "I hope being a few minutes late won't count against me," she said, her warm brown eyes showing a hint of humor despite her nervousness. Little did either of them know that this seemingly ordinary job interview would be the beginning of a story that would transform not just their lives, but the entire company.